Awesome. Welcome to everyone who has joined us on this webinar by PRCA Africa NextGen. My name is Mpholo, and I'm a senior consultant at Opinion and Public DCW, and I get to work with phenomenal brands across the continent. So I'll be facilitating today's discussion about what to expect when in your first year of work in public relations. With that, we'll go through our program, which will start with introducing the panel, followed by a deep dive conversation. We'll have a questions and answers session with the audience. And after that, we'll end off with the panel's final words. I'd like to welcome my panelists today, who have a broad experience in PR and communications. And first off, we have Zithobile Shabalala, Senior Account Manager from Edelman Africa, an award-winning global agency with a fast-growing footprint in Africa. Then we have Davina Nnawuihe, Senior Strategist from Opinion and Public DCW, a multi-award-winning Francophone and West Africa go-to agency. Then there's Brenda Sono, Senior Account Manager at Eclipse Communications, one of South Africa's fastest growing multi-award winning independent communications agencies. And lastly, the thorn among the roses, we have Shaun Demmer, Account Director at Razor PR, which is actually Provoke's current Africa Consultancy of the Year. So welcome everyone, and thank you so much for being here. Those of us on the webinar have been newbies in the industry before, right? Some of us joined the industry fresh from varsity, some of us as interns, and some of us actually made a career change. So we know firsthand how the shift from the auditorium to the workspace can be an amazing, however, also very daunting experience. And I guess this comes when we realize what we've learned in university may not necessarily match the reality on the job. So Zithobile, I'm going to start with you on this one. Can you please give us some background on this topic and why it is that we are having this conversation today?
Thank you so much, Lerato, and welcome to everyone who's joining us today. I think a starting point for us is almost, I think I'll just take a couple of steps back into when I actually knew I wanted to study and wanted to work in the PR industry. As early as 16, I already knew what I wanted to study, went into university, selected the relevant courses, and sat through each and every one of those lectures and those assignments, thinking that I knew and I was really prepared for what PR was. I watched the likes of Devil Wears Prada, and everyone knows if you watch Devil Wears Prada, you're like, I've got this, I know what this is, I'm really excited. This is going to be glamorous, this is going to be fun. And that was basically the little knowledge that I had of the industry. And the minute I had to make that transition, stepping out of the University of Johannesburg's lecture halls and into the workplace, it became quite overwhelming for me. It was quite daunting because, first of all, it was not Devil Wears Prada. I was, however, really excited not to see Miranda Priestley walking in and having me shaking in my boots. But outside of that, it was really different from the classroom. It was quite overwhelming. And I wished there was someone and hoped there was someone who could have really prepared me for what the real PR world actually looked like. So I think that is almost that context that almost lays the land for us to understand why we're here today. We are trying to also just stop this generational almost repetition of people stepping into this PR industry with very little knowledge and understanding of what it actually is. So the conversation for today is one that resonates really, really well with me, and especially younger me. And I'm also hoping that it will resonate with many of the people joining us today. And I know that a lot of the panelists here also share the same sentiment. So our hope coming out of today is that we will start almost busting some of those misconceptions around PR, but also equip the people who are watching and joining us today with the experience and the knowledge that we've acquired over the years to better prepare them.
Thanks for that, sir. I'll come to the rest of the panel to take us through, what their first year of working in PR was like. And Davina, you're next. So please share with us your experience in, doing that career shift from journalism into the industry of PR.
Thanks, Lerato. So like Zithobile said, she had plans to be in PR. I didn't. I started out, as a journalist, and the shift wasn't, I would say it was a smooth transition, but it wasn't quite easy because PR is a lot. Like there's a whole lot that you need to know to be in PR. But what I'd say is I had some soft skills, I knew how to write, I knew how to go about the news, so getting into the PR industry wasn't that bad for me. And I would like to say to people that, knowing how to settle into PR starts with having the right soft skills. You need to be able to adapt to situations because the PR industry, what's required of you, you need to be it's really fast paced. So you need to be able to adapt easily, and you need to be very, very, very curious. I was very curious. And I would like to also state that how I started was easy because my first agency sort of had that welcoming platform for any young professional. They had broken down processes. I started from the media monitoring department, so it was easy for me to sort of understand why certain strategies are structured the way it was, or I had to understand why we don't just put stories out there. There's certain ways that we have to make sure that the key messages get to the right audience. So for me, I would just say generally that you have to have soft skills, and then choosing the right agency is very important, for you. So you need to do some sort of research as well, so that when you getting the first agency that you get into wouldn't be very, very, it doesn't feel like you're getting lost, basically. I didn't get that feeling. So I would say that when you start out, make sure that you do the right research, make sure that you have the right soft skills, and then you can get started. Yes, thank you.
And I think if you don't mind me adding as well to that, Lerato, is just also understanding, which is a key one as well. I think what for me was understanding the importance of also just PRing yourself and what that actually comes with. Because we are so consumed by all these other brands and the work we need to do and deliver on from a brand perception standpoint, reputation, delivering on killer campaigns, that we sometimes put ourselves in the back seat and not really understand that we're also stepping in as personal brands. And there's also a job to be done there, and finding out and understanding how you actually go about that is also quite important.
Thanks for that add-on, Zithobile. So, we'll come to that later, what you've just mentioned. Brenda, what was your first year like? You've mentioned you were that one intern in 2014 who BCC'd a media release to media instead CCing it. So can you just take us through that?
I cringe every time I think of that story. It was the first month when I started my internship program at one of the most well-known agencies, and it was a press release that I had to send out for one of our largest clients, which was a pharmaceutical client. And it was the first time I was sending out this press release. So you know how it is when you first start, like as Zithobile mentioned earlier on, you're so overwhelmed because what you're taught in school and the practical side are two, well, I don't want to say two completely different things, but they are different. So it's exceptionally overwhelming. So when people tell you, do you know what a media list is, which is a basic thing, you're just like, yes, I know it, but deep down you don't know it. But because you're so scared to come across as this intern that's not well knowledgeable, that doesn't know what they are doing, you don't want to show that side. But deep inside, you know you are drowning, you're overwhelmed, and you actually don't know what you were doing. So when it came to sending out this very first press release, I was told, send out this press release and, individualize it, personalize it, but that didn't really ring any bells. So I made that mistake, and I'm so happy that we're having these sort of forums where we know what we needed back then when we started our careers, and we're able to equip the future generations to not make the mistakes that we made. I feel like it's a big responsibility that lies on our shoulders to ensure that each and every day, whenever somebody enters our, whether it's an agency, whether it's in corporate, but when there's someone that comes behind you, you're able to equip that person to not make the mistakes that your younger self did make. But yeah, needless to say that I learned how to send out a press release shortly after that. And that's thanks to the fact that, you know, I was given the platform to learn. I was given the platform to make those mistakes, but to learn from those mistakes. And that never happened again. So again, it just shows that we have that responsibility to allow people in the field to make their mistakes, but we also need to just enable them to learn from those mistakes.
So, no, I think everybody relates to that one, isn't it? How about you, Shaun? Tell us like what you learned in that crucial first year about managing relationships, especially with colleagues, right?
You know, I think for me, it was interesting because there's a running joke in my office. I have a loud voice and I'm a lot. And what I learned in that first year of PR is that is part and parcel of why I have managed to forge relationships and why I've managed to find homes in some really great agencies. Because for me, it was finding that balance between who you think you need to be and what you think you need to show, and actually just being authentic and open and asking questions. You know, I'll never forget when I applied for my first job. I'd just finished my honors. You would think I would need a holiday, but immediately I panicked and thought, oh my God, where am I going to work? And I scrolled through to Google some agencies, and I ended up in true Shaun form emailing an agency with the subject line, the perfect PR professional for Flow PR. And I was just like, that's cheeky. I'm funny. They'll love me. And you know what they did? And I joined them 2 weeks later. And, you know, that was my biggest takeaway is I had a very open manager, a very open head of PR, and a really nice environment that showed me in that first year to be yourself and to be a sponge and just to ask and to acknowledge that a lot of us study various things. I know different tertiary institutions, some have a big focus on practical, some have a big focus on theory. But at the end of the day, regardless, you walk in and there's a stark contrast between when they tell you go study the King 3 and go do some corporate messaging. And then you walk in and they say, actually find a cute angle that's going to make a media house like this piece of content that's put in front of you. And it's more about then going, right, how am I agile? How am I thinking on my feet? And again, how do I bring my own personality to the relationships, to my approach to media, to my approach to colleagues? So yeah, I think for me, the biggest thing in that first year was just be too bold and be yourself, but at the same time, do it in a way that is open. And we always tell our grads, we always tell our juniors, be a sponge. I don't think there is a better piece of advice I could give in that first year is absorb, ask, and learn.
Yeah, so that's actually such a great story that you shared. Hopefully someone will steal that idea that you used. But yeah, I can't believe you still remember the King's 3. Ooh. I completely forgot about that. Zithobile, earlier on, you mentioned, right? You mentioned PR in yourself as a professional. Please share with us the things you know, first year professionals or PR practitioners can actually do to achieve this. So give us like some, you know, a how-to guide on this.
I am by no means a master of how-to guides, but I think just from my experience, I'll almost look at that and I'll keep using that as my reference point. And also some of the experiences that I've had in the industry. It's that trust and dependability, I think, are the biggest and most important things that you need to understand, especially stepping in your first year as well. It's something that we hold quite dear, even in with the agency that I'm currently with, which is Edelman, is we do quite extensive work within the trust space because we understand how much value trust actually brings to various relationships that we have within the business landscape. And I think it's really important for us to also understand that trust and dependability weighs quite heavily in how your brand is perceived and how it's understood as well in this industry. And that is one of the ways in which you actually step in and say, I'm putting my best foot forward as well. And with that comes also that almost entrepreneurial spirit for you to also push proactively and try and also understand the industry, but try and push where you can and try and see where you bring in that fresh thinking. Because we're here, I'm sitting here as a millennial right now, and the people that we're seeing walking through our agency doors now are Gen Z. There's a lot of fresh thinking and new ways of processing a lot of information and also delivering on some of this exciting and really cool campaigns that we work on that could come from a mind of a Gen Z, which is one we're trying to really understand right now. So I think it's really important to be proactive in also bringing those insights. You may not necessarily have the industry experience, but remember that also PR, we speak a lot to brands, we speak a lot to consumers. And you are a consumer as well. So there is some insight and some value that you're also able to bring when stepping into the industry. And above and beyond that, I think you may not necessarily have it all figured out and you might still be a deer in the headlights. But there are some of us who've been in this industry for quite some time and are also open to and willing to mentoring. So I think you need to raise your hand and identify someone that you feel that inspires you within the respective agency that does give you this opportunity, and try and start modeling what that path looks like for you and tailoring it to yourself. This person will also then hopefully be a really great support and manager for you to help you also harness some of those unique skill sets and understand what that unique offering is that you bring to that agency, allowing you to really, really dial up on some of those strengths that you have. Because honestly, I just thought I was a very loud person who liked people, and I didn't really know how that could be articulated and refined to add value to the business and to the industry that we're in. And it was only through the support of managers and mentors within this industry who helped me really understand what that USP is that I bring and how I can actually leverage it to build my personal brand, and in turn deliver on exceptional work for some of the clients that we work with. So I think it's really important to understand how to start developing that brand and also identify people who can help you build that brand and harness some of those unique skill sets that you could bring.
Yeah, so what you're essentially saying is basically get to know yourself, but also get to know yourself within the industry. And, you know, that sort of that unique thing, the unique offering that you bring. And sometimes I guess that can actually be even in terms of, you know, the type of niche that you focus in, the type of information or clients that you prefer to work with, or which are your key strengths, which is basically, you know, leveraging your key strengths and making it known, you know, not being shy about it. And this, going back to this being basically a niche within, basically building a niche within the industry. I know, Davina, you have some thoughts on this, you know, around why this is sort of crucial, or not crucial, but rather why this is actually the best way to approach things. Get to know yourself, create a niche or define yourself from the rest, and then obviously build on from that.
Yeah, thank you. So, I mean, when you get into PR, for instance, there's a lot going on. PR is multifaceted, you know, PR fits across different sectors. First of all, I'm going to start with that. And there is no reason why you should feel like you don't fit in. And it's also okay to feel like you don't fit in everywhere, which is where specialization comes in. It's good to have the general expertise, but then it's also good to be specialized in some areas. I worked in an agency where we had lawyers, you know, as PR practitioners. And when we had briefs that had to do with, when we had to do things that may generate, you know, repercussions from the law, this is where these guys step in to say, you know what, these are the boundaries that we shouldn't cross. You know, it sort of helped to make sure that we had like an ironclad team, you know, felt like we were, you know, so I really discovered that it was really important, you know, as you sort of craft your journey, you know, through PR, it's very important to sort of identify those areas. And I'm going to, you know, break this down in two ways. One of the ways would be, I mean, some people are good with storytelling, some people are good with strategies, some people are good with, you know, just, you know, managing the clients, and that's okay, you know, as much as you want to know a bit of everything, those areas that you feel like you really stand out, it's really good for you. Now, I was good in I am good in storytelling and strategy. And it helped me because one time we had a client that needed to, it was their birthday, and they needed to show this emotional side, but they were an extremely corporate brand, like really, really corporate. And, you know, we wanted to break that whole barrier. And my boss at the time called me and said, Davina, you know what can we do to be able to break this barrier? And I always have that, you know, emotional side to storytelling. So that was the reason why she called me. And I was like, you know what, let's just write a love letter to everyone. And she was like, what? Write a love letter? And I'm like, yeah, let's do that. And you know, I looked at the brand, I went back to how they communicated, and I was like, you know what, let me tone this down a bit. And that's how I was able to, you know, put out the love letter. And, you know, on their 19th birthday, you know, they had designed it, everybody loved it, and they put it out, and a lot of people really, really connected with it. And in fact, like the next time they wanted to do something emotional, they had to call me again to do the same thing. So like that, I had already started creating, you know, it felt like, oh, love letter, but that came because I personally I am a poet. So that also translated into my work as a PR practitioner. Now, the second thing would be, you know, like I said, PR, you know, functions across sectors. There's health, you know, there's, you know, telecommunications, you know, there are different sectors. So one thing that could really help, you know, for any young professional is, you know, there are areas where you really, really stand out. You know, I'm good with consumer PR, corporate communications, you know, and then there are some agencies that, you know, deal with government relations. There are people who are personally interested in political conversations, you know. So knowing those things, knowing those industries, knowing how they work, knowing technical terms, you know, that's really how you start to build a niche for yourself. You know, I am very good with PR, but at the same time, when it comes to political conversations, I can, you know, really, really, you know, deal with all the issues that come from it. I can handle crisis management. So those things sort of help you to stand out from the pack. Yes, thank you.
So, goodness, you know, apologies, this thing of unmuting and muting. So, I mean, I like what you say, you know, I like the breakdown of what you say about, you know, building your own niche. You know, I think that's a very great way for someone to actually understand their journey, and also in picking the type of agencies that they would like to be with. I don't know, you guys, if it's the same from your experience, but it's definitely been a guiding compass to me in the type of experience, I mean, agencies that I go for deliberately. But Davina, I know you also want to touch on this point about, you know, as much as we are building or growing in the industry, it is also quite important to prioritize, you know, the quality over quantity in terms of our deliverance, even if it's within our niche or within our expertise.
Yeah, so I learned early on, like I said, when I started out, I started with the media monitoring department. And at the time we were doing monitoring manually, you know, so I had to go through tons and tons and tons of newspapers, going through every line to make sure that, you know, what we tried to communicate was, you know, represented. I had to go through social media conversations as well. Some of the stories online, you know, I had to make sure that every point in time, you know, whatever we were trying to communicate, you know, at the end of the day, anybody who's reading our story, anybody who is talking about it gets the message. That is the ultimate for any PR practitioner. It's not about the numbers. The numbers are good, but how important are the numbers if your target audience or the various stakeholders you're trying to talk to don't get the message? How important are the numbers if they don't drive the necessary engagement on conversations that need to spread? You know, how important are these numbers if at the end of the day, you just have an empty campaign, but then you take the numbers back to the clients and then you're like, I have done a great job. And sometimes, you know, PR professionals do get away with it, you know, because sometimes when you're dealing with, you know, maybe the marketing department, they care about the numbers. But I think, you know, as PR practitioners, we have ethics, we have the way we practice. And I think that every professional should hold that to heart. We shouldn't really care so much about vanity metrics as much as we care about the quality of work, you know, the results we get. And I mean qualitative results. Have we been able to influence positively? Have we been able to, initiate a shift? Have we been able to, drive impact generally? And that's one of the reasons why even at Opinion and Public, some of those things that we do stand out, because we're all about driving meaningful conversations. And I think every PR professional should be reminded of that every time they want to do a campaign or come up with something that, will generate results for the clients. Yeah.
Most definitely. Thanks for that. Brenda, this one speaks to you mostly around, and Zithobile mentioned it earlier on around her view of what PR was like when she was growing up, when she was 16-year-old, when deciding to go, deciding what career she wants to embark on. And we've basically seen it, right, with newbies, with the agencies that we have worked for or work with, that what they struggle to actually understand what PR is, or how important it is for a brand, how it is actually applied in the real world, especially when they get into the workspace and they realize that there's so much admin behind the scenes. It can be a bit tedious chasing after media, right? So Brenda, tell me a bit about how, when you were growing up, what did you think PR was based on what you saw on television, or as we know, on Generations, versus what you experienced to be as a PR professional?
I mean, honestly, yeah, my early childhood perception of PR and marketing and advertising was the famous, I think one of the biggest soapies we've had in South Africa, which was Generations. They used to have an advertising agency called New Horizons, and there used to be this nice flamboyant receptionist, and you'd hear them launching and working on campaigns. And I was like, oh my word, can't wait to do this. I want to work on campaigns. Mind you, at that time, I had no idea what a campaign was, but you just hear them throwing around this jargon of activations, press releases. They would have these press junkets. And I was like, this looks like fun and games. So that's my earliest memory of understanding what PR kind of is or was back then. And when it came time to choose my sort of degree or what I wanted to study, I remember looking at the sheet that had all these options in front of me, and the first thing I ticked on was corporate communications. And I ticked on it because it said it has PR, it has communications, and I was like, I'm a person that loves communicating. I think I can actually relate to Shaun when he says he's loud, he's out there, he's bubbly. And when I'd ask around and ask other people, like, what sort of traits does a PR professional have to have, and they were like, oh, they need to be bubbly. You can't just be in this little ball, you need to be out there, you need to be vocal. And actually PR is more of like a female job. And lo and behold, when I did study it and when I started working, there was males. I mean, I interact with males and I'm learning from males. So I think there's just so much that we don't know. And again, it brings us back to these sort of platforms. There's so much that we don't know about PR. And Davina made mention of it, that PR is so multifaceted. I mean, you need to just find your passion point. For me, it's engineering and construction clients. That's where my passion point is. But it took me a couple of years to understand, number one, what PR is. Number two, where I find my passion point. Like I'm not a consumer PR practitioner. I mean, PR is PR at the end of the day, so I can work for a consumer brand, but I know because over the years and based on the clients and the agencies I've worked on, my strongest passion point is indeed construction PR. But back then I didn't even know that PR could be so diverse and so multifaceted. And back then you're thinking it's just PR. You're not thinking that there's digital media, that it feeds into social, that there's advertising, and that it shouldn't just be seen as one little cluster, and that it's multifaceted. So in essence, yeah, we learn a lot as we grow through our careers, and no day is ever the same. But it's good to have these platforms again, as I've been reiterating, that we're able to tell the newbies as soon as they start that it's not like what you're taught in school. And what I also appreciate about certain varsities is that they now actually force or have introduced practical activities as part of the curriculums. So you'll get a certain intake of, interns for that period of time, just so that they can see how our typical day-to-day looks like. And then you're able then to see that, is PR really what I want to do, or do I need to switch my path?
Yeah, so I mean, it's great to see how some of the institutions are actually adapting with the times, right? Especially if we talk about moving to the digital space, because I myself actually did this. I'm not going to mention how very long ago it was, but we started studying social media when it was actually not even a buzz at all. So, but speaking of those challenges that you mentioned, you know, the nitty-gritties and learning and cultivating that understanding about PR, you know, actually, I'm curious about, you know, from your experience, Shaun, what has been like your toughest challenge during your journey in that first year?
I think it's interesting because half of it builds on what Brenda said. For me, the biggest challenge is finding your feet on two fields. One is the functional and one is the soft skills and emotional. And I think, you know, if we're talking about what to expect in your first year, and it's probably your first, your second, your third, your fourth year even, it's that it's okay to feel a whole lot of things. It's okay to feel like you don't know why you studied this, you don't know what you're doing. Am I in the right agency? Am I in the right specialty? You know, a lot of people think they're going to walk into the agency and flutter about at events with a headpiece in, making sure that everyone is doing what they need to do, or that you're going to be the mouthpiece for your client, when we actually all know when you are accidentally quoted in a print article because someone got in touch and took you instead of your client, that you want to hang your head in shame and hide. So for me, it's okay from a challenge perspective to acknowledge you're going to feel a lot. And then I think besides the functional, the most important in many aspects is that it's also okay that you're going to go through a lot of emotional feelings in your first year. For me, we need to take a step back and acknowledge that we work in an incredibly fast-paced industry. We work in an incredibly emotionally fueled industry. We're dealing with media, we're dealing with clients, we're dealing with deadlines, we're dealing with colleagues internally. And it's sometimes very tricky, especially as a junior in the industry, not to take that all on. I think we place a large focus on helping each other with EQ and emotional resilience here at my agency, because at the end of the day, it's tough to not carry it. And, you know, the best thing that our MD always reminds us all is that it's PR, not the ER. Your worst day is going to end at 5 and tomorrow's a better one. But I think acknowledging from that first day that you're going to go through a myriad of emotions and not carry it. You know, don't let a thing be a thing, and rather just say, how do I put the work first? How do I acknowledge that I am allowed to feel things, but I'm also allowed to ask for help, and I'm also allowed to go home and say, you know what? I did my work, I did it well, emotions were there, but I'm going to put it behind me because tomorrow is going to be a better day. So for the most part, it's finding an early on balance of there's a functional skill set to be learned, but there's also a soft skill, emotional skill set to be learned. And I think that is what's going to help in the first year. And hell, all the way into 10 years, 20 years in, you know, EQ doesn't start and stop in one course or one conversation or one self-help book. It's knowing that you're going to start a journey of balancing emotions and stresses, and you're going to keep it going, because that's what's going to make you a strong consultant down the line.
Oh my gosh. Wow. Thank you for that, Shaun. I mean, you've pretty much summed it up in terms of, I mean, I like what you talk about in terms of that, managing your emotions and understanding them and being able to deal with the very high pressure industry that we're in. I remember there was actually an article a few years ago, I think it was in Forbes, and it was written that PR is like the third most stressful job in the industry.
I think we're just behind paramedics or pilots or paramedics.
It was a pilot. I think pilot was first, and yes, paramedics, and then it was PR. But I'm sure it's no longer that top level at the moment. And obviously with the shifts that are happening in the media space that are adding more pressure on PR professionals, it's very important to make sure those emotions that we experience are regulated. But just wanting to touch off, you know, I'm going to move a bit to the side on this one, you know. There's a lot of things that sort of can, you know, affect our emotions. And a lot of the time it can be simple things like having a tug of war with clients, also like having that not being happy with the type of remuneration that we're getting, especially when you're starting off. And I know, Zithobile, you know, we're having this discussion and you wanted to talk more about, sorry, Zithobile, you want to talk about negotiation as an important skill in PR. Can you then tell us where the skill actually has a place in the profession?
So I think to start it off, it's more of also understanding negotiation as a life skill before we even go into the PR industry. And for us to even understand and go into any negotiation, I think from as young as we are as kids negotiating with our parents on going for a sleepover and why it makes sense to actually go during the week. And you do your research, right? You do your research, you do your homework, and you like come back to your mom with this clear strategy and you're like, listen, babes, if you let me go to Brenda's house this week, like on Wednesday, what I'll do is I've done all my homework, I've done all my assignments, I've washed your car, I will do this and I will do that, just to get that negotiation to run as smoothly as possible and get your mom to approve this day, right? So it's something that starts off as young as we are when we're kids. We're always negotiating. It's a life skill. And I think it's one that is so important to also then bring into the industry and understand as a PR professional, because we tend to, like, I know from my experience, having not done the homework and the research I needed to do when stepping into the PR industry, the minute someone sent me a mail and said, hey, Zithobile, we saw your CV, here's a job. I was like, oh my gosh, I have a job, I'm taking it, let's go, you know? I didn't understand what negotiation meant and what almost those salary expectations were for someone starting off as junior as I was. But if I had armed myself with that information, I would have been able to step into some of these conversations and actually said, wait, hold up. I've done a little bit of digging, and as far as I understand, this is where the benchmark is for someone starting off at my level. And that could have actually then put me in good stead starting off, and not find myself in a situation where throughout my career, or for some years within my career, needing to almost course correct something that I had not prepared for when I started off. So I do think it's really, really important. You may not have the experience, and I think sometimes we almost fall prey to the fact that we don't know and we don't have the experience, so we'll take whatever comes our way. I think it's still important you've got a very critical skill set of research. That's what we do mostly when we're in the classrooms. We're researching. We know how to do that and do that really well. So I think if there's a skill set you know you have, starting off, it's that one. And it's one that you really need to leverage when stepping into this industry. You won't win a lot of the conversations. You may not have the right knowledge, the right language. You may not get it right the first time or win every battle. But I think you get comfortable with having conversations about money, especially as young Black females in this industry as well. It tends to be a challenge. We do know some of the disparities that do exist in the industry, and also how we've got businesses that are backing and supporting and trying to correct this. But it's not just up to them to correct it, but it's also up to us to do the work that we need to. So I think it's really important to just go in with that research and also understand that this is a skill that you're going to, it's that muscle you're going to keep working out until you have those defined abs. It's that one. You'll keep working it out, and you'll get to a point where as you climb up this ladder, you'll get comfortable talking about money. You'll get comfortable talking contracts. You'll get comfortable liaising with influencers. We do quite a bit of extensive influencer work as well. So you get comfortable negotiating and having those conversations across like a wide spectrum of the industry, almost key activities that you'd almost need to execute on. So I think it's really, really important. And it starts with doing your homework, and it starts with understanding that you're not going to win at everything and you won't get it right. So don't turn everyone down and say, no, I deserve 20,000 Rand as an intern or whatever it is. Don't get too cocky about it, but it helps you manage those expectations. And as you go and add value to your company, and you understand that there's that difference between your job description and value as well with time, that's something else that you get to know, that there's a job description and there's adding value. And the minute you step out of the ticking all the boxes and doing all the job description stuff, that's when you step into the adding value space. And once you're in that space, that's when negotiation becomes your superpower. because you've brought something that is really unique into the space that you're finding yourself. So I definitely think it's that muscle. Let's start working it out as soon as possible. Start negotiating, start small, and it will prepare you for some of the bigger and more critical conversations in your career and in your life as a whole.
Indeed, it'll actually prepare you to negotiate the deadlines or maybe timesheets. No, I didn't mean it. We don't negotiate timesheets.
We're never going to win the timesheet battle.
We're never winning that battle. Never.
But yeah, I mean, Shaun, so I mean, I think this actually ties in well with how mentorship, the role of relationships, as well as mentorship. Because surely if you are someone who's starting out and you already have a mentor that can take you through and guide you through these type of difficult conversations and how you negotiate or the negotiation spectrum. So I mean, can you give us a little bit more in terms of the importance of having one in this career specifically?
Well, I think, for me, mentorship is one thing and it's very important, but what you mentioned earlier is that relationships and mentorships are a large part of what we do. Taking it out of the agency space or wherever you want to work, I think you need to start and understand that comms at its core is relationship-based. We manage relationships with ourselves, we manage with media, we manage with suppliers, with clients. I think if you can start out and acknowledge the power of relationships, you will establish yourself as a stronger consultant. Nobody wants a transactional relationship when it comes to the work we do. A good day sports editor is not going to land you anything, but a relationship with a journo that you've built that says, hey, how are you doing? I know you had a kid recently. Hope all is going well. Below is something I thought you're going to love. That's where you start finding your feet, your niche, your media relations, how you establish yourself. So I think taking that step back and going, take mentorship out for now and look at relationships. That is where your sweet spot is. And it also, it helps deliver better work. At Razor, we have one value. I know a lot of agencies have 5 and they're on the wall and they're in reception and pretty much most people won't be able to name them. And we took a step back and said, you know what? Everything for us is just kind. Because if you're kind to yourself, kind to your clients, kind to your colleagues, that is how you manage to move through the stresses and find relationships that work, that help deliver amazing work for clients. And then absolutely, we were discussing, all of us before the recording started, that we always kind of go back to a colleague today could be a client tomorrow. It's a very small industry. You might sit next to someone at work and love them, or maybe don't love them. And you don't know where the two of you will be in a year's time, 2 years' time. You don't want to start your journey in PR or in comms and find yourself sitting across a boardroom table with someone that maybe you didn't leave on great terms with 5 years ago, and now they are the client deciding, does your retainer get renewed? So relationships at every point of what you do are absolutely key. And I think it's through those relationships that you can start to find a mentor. We worked with an association recently and we hosted a mentorship workshop for first years and second years and interns of the media space. The biggest takeout at the end of the day is, please don't think finding a mentor means I must go and LinkedIn inbox every MD of every agency. It doesn't have to be an MD. It doesn't have to be your own BUD or your own GAD. It can be peer mentorship. It can be leadership mentorship. At the end of the day, if you can build a relationship into a place where you get guidance and value and knowledge and growth and learnings from someone, that is that starting spot to say, hey, I've got someone who's going to help me stay on the right career path that I want to set up for myself.
Indeed. I mean, relationships are resources. They're a commodity. I think with any industry, but specifically ours, you need those relationships with the client, the media, to make your life a lot easier, and also, to develop at your desired rate within the industry. Okay, so I think just being cognizant of the time, it's 13:44 right now, so I thought let's maybe review some of the questions that the panel, not the panel, but the viewers have, and then I'll throw it to you guys in the panel, And whoever feels comfortable answering, if you're not gonna put up your hand, you know what's gonna happen, right? So we've got here an anonymous who says that it's good to hear this happens to everyone. I mean, this was when Brenda was talking earlier. We always see leaders and it feels like they are perfect, always. Let me just see, I'm not sure, this is basically a comment. It's good to know these kind of things happen earlier on. And then we've got another anonymous comment. This one is a question. So how do you seek out mentors when everyone is so busy? I think that pretty much was answered by you, Shaun. So
yeah, I think, if I can just add to it, there are so many different ways that you can approach finding a mentor. It can be as simple as asking a senior in your agency, or like I said, even a colleague for a coffee. They might not be able to, they might not feel comfortable. A lot of people don't feel comfortable being mentors. But it starts with a coffee. It starts with a conversation that says, I want to grow. I want guidance. I want, a little bit of insight to learn from. So look at anyone in the industry, in the agency that you're in or that you're starting out in, and start having various conversations, coffees. You'll find something. And if you don't, then you can be a little bit more intentional. There's absolutely nothing that says, hello, BUD, hello, MD, I really want to start a mentorship journey with someone, please help. And they can identify someone, they can guide, they can also give you tips. So as long as you're open to having the conversation and start asking for guidance and growth, someone will be there to help you.
Yeah. And this is actually, there's a follow-up to this question where it says, does your group have anything, we can tap into for mentorship? And I know as the PRCA Africa NextGen group, we are actually working on a mentorship program, but we do invite anybody who wants to reach out to any of us. Reach out if you want a mentor from any of us. We literally have opened our doors to that, being part of the organization or representing it from this perspective. So,
and Lerato, just to also add to what Shaun was speaking about with the previous question, is also that the statement around everyone is so busy. I'm a firm believer that you're as busy as you are scheduled. So if you raise your hand and if you approach someone and get yourself to be part of their schedule, then there'll be time for that. But if you're just going to look around the room and try and see if Brenda has any extra time, Zithobile has any extra time, then of course you're not going to build that relationship or get the mentorship, because of course she'll be busy. So you're as busy as scheduled. So I think make it a priority to make it onto whoever this mentor is, make it a priority to make it onto their schedule. Make yourself part of that. And I think that will be the beginning of that journey as well. It needs to be a deliberate and conscious effort on your part as well.
Yeah, I think if I can add to that, you flagged something that we discuss quite often here. You have to be intentional about it, but it also, mentorship isn't just, my boss always says, it's not a USB out of his head and into mine. You have to put in the work and be intentional. And if you're going to insert yourself into someone's schedule, do it with a plan. Don't just go and sit in front of them and say, I have 30 minutes with you, grow me. It's going in and saying, here's what I want to achieve, here's where I want to go. Have questions, have a plan, be open. They've got that 15 minutes, you've made your way into their schedule. It's also then on you to make sure you use that 15 minutes to the best that you can.
100%.
Yeah, I also learned over the years, there's a peer-to-peer type of mentorship. I mean, sometimes what you have is that if you guys are in the same position as interns, you're learning stuff, but you didn't think you would share it with your peers, and often we've been in that position before. We were able to share our experiences, but also share the tips, the improvement type of information that will actually help you guys move forward. We've got one here from Sandisiwe Nguni, who says, "Good day, everyone. I hope you are all well. I'm a recent PR graduate, and I'd just like to get tips on how to get into the industry besides applying for internships or the conventional way, of course. The job hunting process has been quite challenging. Any advice could be very helpful to get my foot in the door." Brenda, I think, you know, this one is more up your alley.
I think my advice is, first of all, read, put yourself out there as much as possible. And I'll give my own personal testimony to this, but when I graduated, I didn't just spring into a PR agency or get a PR related job. I was actually a sales consultant selling office furniture. And because I'd been reading and looking around, I knew of Ogilvy. So I started my career at Ogilvy, which is one of the top multinational agencies there is. And I happened to have to drop off a catalog with my little card so I could sell this office furniture to this company. And when I got there, I was like, here's Ogilvy. So when I came back, I Googled their HR address and I just threw my CV at them. And I'm sure it was not a neatly put together CV, because I mean, even when you leave school, you don't know how to, you know, put together a proper CV. And a couple of weeks later, I heard back from them, but I didn't just stop there. I would just approach random companies and be like, look, I'm just looking for experience, whether it's paid or unpaid. I just want to learn and put what I've learned in school into practice. And my passion was always to get a job that's related to what I studied. So I think number one, whoever asked this question, sorry, I can't remember their name, so I can't reference their name, but whoever asked it, the fact that you're already applying and you can see that it's tough, because the reality is the industry is tough. The world is tough. We've just come out of COVID. It's tough to get somewhere. But the fact that you're already so driven enough and you keep pushing yourself, that's the step in the right direction. And my advice is always keep knocking. Don't knock at one door, knock at multiple doors. Someone is going to open it up for you. Do your research on a company, find out what exactly they do. We've got the beauty of the internet, honestly. Go and Google what they do, where they've been mentioned in the news, so that even when you send them your CV, say to them, I realized that your CEO was profiled on the business day, and honestly, I see myself working at this organization because I want to learn and I want to be a positive contribution to this organization. Please give me the chance. But don't just knock at one door, knock at multiple doors, and trust you me, one of them is going to open. But number one, I think my advice is always read, and read. Research, I think it was mentioned earlier on, I just can't remember which panelist mentioned it, but research is imperative. I mean, every single morning when I wake up, I look at the News 24 app just to see what's happening. So as a PR person or an aspiring PR practitioner, research, read, and keep banging on these doors. Don't even knock, bang on them. You're bound to get, you know, whether it be an internship program or something, you're about to get it. So yeah, all the best. And if you know what, if you believe it, you can get it, honestly. So yeah, that's what I would say to that response.
And Brenda, I like what you're saying as well about the CV and looking at, I see your CEO was recently profiled. I think it's really important to also not do the spray and pray approach, which is one phrase we always use with media, where we're like, you can't just BCC media, younger Brenda, you can't BCC media, you also can't just send media a cut and paste of the exact same press release. You need to contextualize, you need to tailor it so that they can see the space in which this would fit for them as well. And they can see that you've made a conscious effort to try and find almost that alignment between the two. So I think it's really important as well with those CVs as well. Don't just, especially for the spaces that you know you really want to be in, make sure you're very deliberate in tailoring that CV to align to some of the work that you've seen produced by those respective agencies or companies. I think that will also be a really nice way to just distinguish yourself from the rest, but also try not to send anyone a CV that's like 5 pages long. Even that is too long. We're not trying to read those anymore. Yeah, if you can do it in 2 pages, 1 is ideal, but if you can do it in 2 max, that will really work for you. But I do think tailoring is important. And that's, again, going back to some of the points mentioned by Shaun, it's a very unique skill set when it comes to tapping into and building relationships as well.
Oh, sorry. Let me just quickly add, it's also good when you're looking for opportunities that you prepare yourself for those opportunities as well. So one of the things that I would just recall is the fact that we did have that toolkit up on the PRCA website where you can sort of familiarize yourself with, you know, what is expected of a PR practitioner, so that when you're shooting these shots and then they call you, you're able to give them, you know, real value. That's just what I wanted to add.
Wow, well, that's actually a fantastic point, Davina. And of course, if you are struggling with ideas, remember what Shaun told us at the beginning, everyone. He sent a very special email. That's a tip to everyone to be, you know, to copy and paste. Nothing wrong with using existing ideas. Okay, so I mean, just to wrap up on this, you know, we've taken, you know, the listeners or viewers' questions. So I had one last thought, considering what we've gone through in the last 2 years, as Brenda and Zithobile mentioned, you know, it's been hectic. And I would imagine it's been hard for those who are trying to get into the industry and also learn and have hands-on experience. But also what's happened is that the workspace has changed, because now we're going in every 2 days, every 3 days, every once a week. How can we, you know, as an industry, be able to train and attract new talent in this new life that we live in the workspace? Davina.
Okay, the first thing right up on that list is PRCA. I mean, I feel like, you know, what we're doing with PRCA NextGen is very, very important. You know, it would help. I mean, this webinar, for instance, it's already helping, you know, those who have interest, those who have already come into the industry. It's giving you that platform to sort of learn more, take on more. And I feel like this way we're able to attract more people. And then with the constant articles that, you know, a lot of professionals in this community we're putting out, I think that we're sort of, you know, basically saying you guys are totally welcome. Come to our world, come experience it, come enjoy it, because there's just so much that we want to give, which brings me to the next thing, which would be, you know, mentorship. As we've said, you know, we as professionals, while these guys are seeking, we should also take up time. We should dedicate, you know, some of our time to, you know, giving back and sort of taking on some more, if we already have some more mentees, and generally just build a vision that these new talents are, you know, willing, or they can't wait to sort of tap into, show them that, you know, what we're doing is bigger than us, is bigger than them. It's a huge thing that we're doing, and we can't wait for them to be a part of it.
Okay, cool. So Zithobile, I'm going to give this one to you as we close off, as in the one final look at if you guys could advise, you know, the younger you as an intern, as an AE, Shaun, Zithobile, Brenda.
So what I would say to younger versions of all of us here,
just to be clear, sorry, Zithobile, give it like a 15-minute thing. Let's go, boom, boom, boom. We've got 2 minutes left.
Yeah. So what that would be is that PR is a constant learning environment. It's a constant journey of learning and unlearning. It's learning and unlearning for you starting off. It's learning and unlearning for some of us who've been doing this for donkey years. So if you can just be kind to yourself and open yourself up to learning and open yourself up to unlearning as this industry continues to evolve.
Great. Shaun, Brenda, do you guys have anything else to add on this?
Yeah, I think, and then don't worry, I speak very quickly. But for me, it's also be open to the fact that you're going to have fun. Someone put in the comment chat, sounds like it's a volatile industry. Is the emotion worth it? And yes, 40% of my beard is white, but it's so fulfilling. It is something that you're absolutely going to love. You're going to have good days, you're going to have bad days. Let me tell you, a decade in, if I still secure an interview, I still get that little giddy feeling. And a campaign done well gives me a giddy feeling. So yes, it's emotional. Yes, it's stressful. Which job isn't? You know, we don't sign up to work in a post office from 9 to 4. We sign up to do amazing stuff with amazing brands, with amazing people in the industry. And so I think that's why, instead of saying, you know, what can bring talent to the industry, I would just say anyone watching, you are thinking about or have picked a good one. Just ride the roller coaster and have fun.
Brenda, your last words?
I think I'd actually like to build on to what Shaun says, is that it's fun. No day is ever the same. And I think that's what I appreciate so much. Yeah, it's just, you learn something new every single day. I mean, some of us have been at it for 8 years, and you learn something new every single day. I think what I would have said to my young self, or what I would advise, younger people is, again, read, research, be hungry, grab it and run with it. Once you've got it, grab it, run with it, learn, and then find your niche and grow within your niche. But yeah, have fun. It's fun. It's amazing.
Thank you all to our panelists, Brenda, Shaun, Zithobile, Davina. You've been amazing. And I'm sure you are, in your agencies as well. So we'll be wrapping this up. And thank you all to the viewers, for joining us in this webinar. And remember, we're here if you're looking to actually get in touch for a mentorship program. We are available. But also, generally, like Brenda said, it is very important to be well-read and well-researched and well-informed when in this industry. Generally, that will actually set you apart, and it'll give you a competitive edge. So hopefully this has been very useful to you, and good luck and goodbye.
Thanks, everyone. Have a lovely one. Bye.
Cheers. Bye.